DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. We are joined now by Shehan Jeyarajah, CBS Sports National College Football writer. Shehan, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's start with the most disappointing thing about the Big 12 media days. They're not doing a poll. Who cares if it's wrong? It's something to talk about. Shehan, what are they doing? Come on.
Well, I think that last year there was just a lot of perspective that Arizona State being picked last, BYU being picked low in the poll, that maybe it hurt their perception whenever it came time to, top 25 college football playoff and all that. Now, my opinion is if you're outside of the top 25 heading into the season, I think it's already a climb just to be able to get to that point. So yep. I think it's a little silly. Maybe I'll do my own little informal poll tomorrow or something. But I do wish that they kept that because look, I got a message from somebody at a school that was like, man, this kind of sucks because we would have loved to make some last place graphics so that we could kind of like own up to it and have some fun with it.
Yeah, I think that, and we'll be down there broadcasting both days as we always are. But now you're not going to have the top 2 or 3 teams' coaches say, oh, the polls are meaningless, nor are you going to have the teams that are picked at the bottom, oh, such blatant disrespect, we'll show them. They've taken our talking points away. What the crap were they thinking?
Well, and the other thing, too, is like, because I want people to understand, right? I've covered many, many media days in my life. Like, this is kind of like what people talk about, right? Like, I remember a couple of years ago, Neil Brown, who was then the coach at West Virginia, like most of his opening address was spent talking about we were picked last place. We're sure as heck not going to finish last place.
Right.
By the way, they didn't. They won 9 games. And like, so it's a little bit of like an obvious disrespect card. Right. It's an obvious talking point. And so, look, if I was confident that meant that we were going to talk a whole lot of substance the next 2 days, maybe I'd feel a little better about that. But that's not really what media days are for.
Well, the topic we know everyone's going to be talking about is, did Texas Tech really pay a kid $5 million? And how could they do that? Because we got this salary cap coming. But maybe we do and maybe we don't. Now, that $5 million is spread over 3 years, so that's one factor. And I'm sure Texas Tech is sick of losing 5-star offensive linemen to Oklahoma, Texas, and Texas A&M. So I get why they might do this. But if they're betting on the fact that the NIL rules are going to get struck down and it's not going to be pay for play, it's just going to be the wild, wild west out there, I think that might be a shrewd bet by Texas Tech if that's what's behind this. What do you think?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, too, the way that, I talked to several sources around the program the past few days, and what they kind of said was, like, the way the contract is written, they're almost protected for any circumstance. So, like, they're protected for circumstances if this cap ends up being super hard and ends up being, very, very stringent. They're protected if the cap doesn't ultimately stay in force. So they actually have a lot of different stipulations in place in that contract. So the top line number is the maximum that it could possibly be worth if the market conditions change quite a bit. But the thing is, like, again, we don't really know what's going to be happening in this next year, too. So whenever this player gets on campus, the number that he probably will be receiving will probably be lower, at least at the start. But it's also, by the way, a bet by an agent to say, so, hey, you know what? We are pretty confident that this will not hold up in court, that we will ultimately be able to get the maximum amount that we agreed to. So everybody's trying to protect themselves in every direction. And so when you see a number out there, just know that there's a lot of context that goes along with it.
I believe last year was the year of the running back in the conference. Do you think that this year is the year of the quarterback?
I think it is. I mean, the amount of great quarterbacks that are coming back in the Big 12 is pretty astounding. Obviously, EA released their list of the top 20 quarterbacks, and the Big 12 had 5 on the list. And I actually think that Josh Hoover at TCU not being on the list is kind of crazy. So I think that there are even more guys. And by the way, like there are the known commodities, guys like Sam Levitt, like Josh Hoover, like Sawyer Robertson. There's guys who are just incredible. Rocco Becht, I'd be remiss not to mention. There are guys with a lot of upside, too. Avery Johnson, I think, has a chance to take a huge step this year at Kansas State. I'm really excited about Connor Wegman and Devin Dampier at Houston and Utah, respectively. And so, I mean, you really look across this conference, there should be at least 10 programs and maybe more than that have above average national quarterback situations in the power conferences. And there are a couple guys on this list who I would not be surprised to see get into national conversations.
If there were a poll, would you have UCF, Arizona, Houston, Cincinnati, one of those teams at the bottom? Is there somebody else you think is set up for a big fall? Where are the easy W's, allegedly, aligned in the Big 12 this year?
Yeah, out of that bottom group, I think Houston doesn't belong in that bottom group. I think that Houston's going to impress more than people expect this year. For me, the answer is pretty easy. I think that UCF is that last place team in the Big 12. They, of course, have a new coaching staff with Scott Frost coming back to town. A lot of young coaches on that staff, exciting coaches, but young coaches. And they've got a roster that just really has no rhyme or reason to it at this point. They brought in, I believe, more than 50 transfers at this point. They've got a quarterback in Taven Jackson, who I'm actually pretty excited about, coming over from Indiana. He played in relief of Curtis O'Rourke last year at Indiana. But Curtis O'Rourke, not O'Rourke. But I think that just for them, I mean, like, I just don't know where you feel great about the roster. I think their defensive line could be pretty good. I think that they've got some bodies at running back, but like I don't see a whole lot on this roster that has a chance to be a good Big 12 unit. So for me, they're the team coming into the year that I have last. Now, I think what's fascinating again is going to be kind of how some of these other teams in that range manage it, right? Arizona, it's a total turnover under Coach Brent Brennan from the Jedd Fisch era now to the Brent Brennan era heading into year two. The team that I'm probably most fascinated by in the Big 12 this year is Oklahoma State. They finished winless in Big 12 play last year. And by the way, they lost 5 guys who were like really good players off that team. Ollie Gordon, Colin Oliver, Nick Martin, like some really, really good players. And they didn't replace them with a whole lot of proven commodities. So this is a team that, again, you just kind of give Mike Gundy a little bit of trust. But if you ask me, heading into the year, UCF and Oklahoma State are probably the 2 worst rosters in the league.
I think that this year that the league really needs to step up its game in terms of the marquee teams doing well, because the reputation is there, right? And we know the teams that are at the top and who are expecting to be at the top. And I think that that's the teams like Utah and Oklahoma State dropping off to the level that they did last year, I think really hurt the league in terms of getting a second team into the playoff. And I think with the quarterbacks returning, several of them, and you even mentioned the TCU kid, and I agree with you, he should be on the list because they have an opportunity any given week to have 2 or 3, 4 quarterbacks who throw for 350 yards. And those types of numbers are attention-getting. So I think it's really important that these guys play and play well so that the league can get 2 teams in, because it's like last year it wasn't even considered. For whatever reason, BYU got no run to be an at-large team, and SMU did, and BYU beat SMU in your backyard, because I know you're a Dallas guy. With that in mind, how would you respond to all that stuff that I just said? Because I think it's important that they at least have consideration for a second team.
Yeah, well, and I mean, you know, not to relitigate history too much, I feel like BYU was like the one glaring miss by the committee last year. It makes no sense to me that they were ranked behind a 3-loss Clemson at the end of the year with a better showing schedule. But that's old history at this point. I think heading into this year, what people need to realize, right, and this is a new conference, 16 teams, it's a whole new group, but like, year over year, the Big 12 has had multiple teams in that top 12 discussion in the college football playoff era, right? I mean, obviously, the top team, you know, or the top moment was the year that they had 5, 6, and 11 back in 2014. So, like, hypothetically, they would have gotten 3 teams in a year like that. But I think that last year just ended up being a little bit of a down year for the conference. And part of that, like you said, was the fact that there were teams that were expected to do well that faltered, and teams that did not expect to do well that kind of moved up. And that's also part of the logic, right, of getting rid of the preseason poll, is that, you know, when you have teams with implicit credibility, and it was one thing when the Big 12 had Texas and Oklahoma that just always have that implicit credibility. I mean, you really do need them to show up because it just allows your other teams then to pick up high-quality wins. If Utah ends up being a top 10 team and teams beat them, at least they had the opportunity to beat a top 10 team at that point. So I do think that we need to see more stratification from the start of the season. We need to see, kind of that top group. The way that I'm kind of going into it is Arizona State, Baylor, Texas Tech, Kansas State. We'll kind of see on BYU with their situation. Like, those teams need to deliver and need to deliver early. And on top of that, they play major non-conference games. I mean, Baylor chief among them. They get both Auburn and SMU. You really need your teams to show up in those games. I think that for a lot of people, because Arizona State improved so much across the season, they kind of look back at that Mississippi State game that, Arizona State was in full control of, but Mississippi State ends up making it a one-score game at the end and kind of say, wow, the best team in the Big 12 struggled with the worst team in the SEC. You really need teams to show up and have good performances right from the start so that teams have 3 months to get some implicit credibility.
So you've mentioned that no matter what they do with the conference poll, it's the top 25 that really matters. How many Big 12 teams will be in the top 10? I bet you're thinking 0, but maybe you think 1. How many do you think will be in the top 25?
Yeah, I think
and which ones? And which ones?
Yes, sure. So I think that for me, there's going to be teams right on the edge of the top 10. Like, I think Arizona State will probably be right on the edge of the top 10. But, it could be what it was last year, where there's a lot in the 11 to 15 range as well. Again, the Big 12 between 11 and 20 last year had 3 or 4 teams. And I think that heading into the year, we're looking at probably something like 5 teams in the rankings. I think Arizona State, after what they did last year, is a lock. I think that when you look at Kansas State, the credibility that they've built up, they're going to be there. I'll be fascinated by Iowa State. That's a team that I probably wouldn't have in the top 25, but I think that they would be right on the edge of mine. And I think that some people, again, because they were a Big 12 finalist last year, might put them pretty high. Baylor is one that I think should be there, that might not be there. TCU, I think that they'll probably have a chance to be there after winning 9 games last year. And so, it'll be kind of an interesting group. So I expect some group of those top four. And I didn't mention BYU. BYU is obviously a fascinating team right now with their quarterback situation. I think that they probably do start the year in the top 25, but as people understand, with Jake Retzlaff out the door and no clear answer at the position, it makes them a little bit hard to project.
We're looking for the 2 teams that would finish first and second because then they would play for the title game, obviously. I think that I can make a case for minimum 6 teams that can finish in the top 2, maybe 8. Can I stretch it to 9? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that, to me, again, there's kind of that top group of maybe 4 or 5 teams that are the most obvious. But, there are at least 4 more teams to me that have the upside to get there. Teams from that middle group, like TCU, I think is going to start the year a little more in the middle group. They definitely have the goods to get there. Kansas, I mean, you saw the way that they ended last year, winning 5 of their last 6 games. They really had a chance to put something special together, and they returned their quarterback, Jalen Daniels, which I think will be a big deal. Utah is a high upside team to me that I think could absolutely come out of nowhere to contend. So, I mean, I think that you have to say at least 8 or 9 teams. I mean, look, I don't think we're going to have as crazy a year as the teams picked 12th and 16th in the Big 12 being at the top of the group, but I do think that this is a year where, and it will be every year, frankly, where you're looking at least 8 or 9 teams that'll have a chance. Again, there's a group of 4, I think, at the top, but I think that maybe up to 9 could have a chance.
Big 12 had the Heisman Trophy winner last year. That couldn't happen again, could it?
It's an interesting group this year. I mean, you mentioned all the quarterbacks coming back, and so I think that the part of the question is right. How do you create a Heisman Trophy winner from the Big 12? You either need a guy who's leading a really, really good team and putting up crazy numbers, or you just need a crazy, crazy, crazy level statistical outlier. I think it's going to be a little tough to have another Big 12 player win, especially like you mentioned, after a guy who with his individual excellence did last year. But there are a few who I think could come to mind, and I'm going to look at the three of those quarterbacks in that top group of the Big 12. I think that Sawyer Robertson has a chance to put up 4,000 yards and 40 touchdowns potentially on a team that could go 11-1. I think that Avery Johnson might be the most intriguing talent in the Big 12 for Kansas State at quarterback. He's probably the one who would be best positioned to put up sort of the outstanding crazy numbers. When you talk about maybe a 3,500 yards rushing, 1,000 yards, 3,500 yards passing, 1,000 yards rushing, maybe 50 total touchdowns. I think that could be in the cards. And then I think that Sam Levitt's going to have a lot of attention coming into the year. He's kind of treated as the QB1 of the Big 12 coming in, and I think for good reason. But, again, like you look down the list too, right? Like Devin Dampier, maybe he ends up completely popping and saving Utah and getting them back into the playoff. Maybe you have somebody at one of these other schools, like a West Virginia, maybe Jaheim White, their great running back, ends up carrying them to a crazy season. So I think that the thing is when there aren't too high expectations, then when you have a team pop, it gives you an opportunity. But it is a little tougher to find out who exactly would have a chance to do that in the Big 12 in 2025.
Well, there won't be polls, but at least we'll get free breakfast and lunch out of the deal for 2 days, huh?
And for me, I always love it because it's a family reunion because, we get everybody down here back in my backyard in DFW, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys this week.
Okay.
All right. Everybody meet at the Star. Shehan, thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Shehan Jeyarajah joining us, CBS Sports national college football writer. Still ahead, the Utah Jazz Open Summer League. If you missed it, our take on night one coming up. Night two tonight. You can listen to the game right here on the Zone.
Trade.
And yes, the Utah Jazz have made a trade. Another veteran is gone. That's next. Stay with us.